I am DJ Linda. And that was said to me in his room. We talked about, you know what, let me just say one thing. I do miss him very much, and I don't want this night in any way for me to be sad. The celebration of life that you've all decided to do, I think is the best thing that you all could have done. And I'm, with you 100%. Anyway, I know Bob a little bit more than a decade. Not like some of you that know him for 3,500 years. But when I met Bob, we were it was a professional relationship. I put an ad in the newspaper for some DJs. So Bob was one that answered, and out of 5 guys that I hired, he's the only one that stuck with the job. He came through every time, he did the job well every time, and he was gracious every time. And DJs are not really known for being gracious. We're not. But he made the crossover from band to DJ excellently. He had a great genius. I was talking to him the other night about it. He was brilliant at being able to communicate to an audience. And he wasn't the best musician, and he wasn't the best singer, but he was brilliant at being able to do what the audience wanted. And he had good people around him. And that's always the success of the way a good company gets successful. You have good people around you, and Bob always did. And he knew how to communicate to an audience and in life about almost everything. He had a great way of letting you feel like what you were doing was not foolish or silly or stupid, even though sometimes it was. He just could communicate the good, and he could let another person know what he needed them to say. Bob loved a lot of things in life. Movies was one of the things. I was his movie partner. We saw every vampire movie known to man. I'm not kidding. Every single one. And I was raised on those movies. Well, there was no father in my house, and on Sundays and Saturdays, we weren't watching sports. We were watching B-rated movies with my mother and my sisters, and they were Frankenstein and the werewolf and Dracula. So when I met Bob, who had a fascination for the vampire like I did, I thought, wow, this is great. This is awesome. So I was his vampire movie buddy. He also liked women. He loved the ladies. He appreciated them, and he had an attitude about him. I brought something. This is how Bob felt. At least that's what he made me feel. When I bought this, I said, Bob, I just got the best thing for my office. And I bring it sometimes to events when there's all ladies there. And he did. I think that he really felt that he was just a person here just to give the ladies some pleasure in any way that he could. He knew a lot of them through the years. I didn't know him in a romantic way, but I know a lot of ladies did, and it's great for them. He had a great time. And he would say that of all the women that he knew, he loved every single one for whatever they had to give, in whether it would be going to the movies, or whether he had some friends that cooked for him. He had some lady friends that he just talked to. Everybody had a different place. Every woman had a different place in Bob's life. As a matter of fact, while I knew him for a long period of the time, I had a boyfriend, we'll call him Mr. X. And he was very jealous. He didn't like any man that I knew, not one. He didn't even like my girlfriends. He didn't like anybody. But he liked Bob. He did, he liked Bob. So we would, when I would go to the movies with Bob, it was no problem for Mr. X. So one time I was talking to Bob and I said, it's so interesting that Mr. X likes you. I wonder why that is. And he said, I'm going to tell you why. So Bob said that one time when we were in the movies that I was at the bathroom or something, and Mr. X was interrogating him. He wanted to understand why he was going to the movies with me. Because in Mr. X's eyes, you don't do this. You don't go with people of the opposite sex unless you're, in bed with them or something. So Bob said to him, and he was brilliant in conveying a message. And Bob told me the story. I wasn't there. He said, I said to Mr. X, I have a lot of women in my life. Some of them I like because they cook great. Some of them I like because they go to the movies. He said, they all do different things for me. He said, and I never got married. I never had children. It's not something that happened for me. And really deep down inside, I don't know that I ever really wanted it. I think I like the way it is. I have all these women that do all these things. So this, however it was that he said this to Mr. X, I could now go to the movies with this man, that where I couldn't even talk to somebody else. So he just, my point in it is that he had this way of conveying to people what was necessary. So if it was a DJ job, and I'm sure Carl had related to me in the band, it was the same way, he could string a bunch of songs together. The chicken dance was necessary, I'm sure, at your wedding at that moment, because Bob knew what to do at the moment. It didn't matter what somebody maybe didn't like. If it was the right thing to do, he did it. And of course he did it spiritually too. He taught me, no one could ever teach me how to meditate. I used to try and try for years. Try and try. I just couldn't do it. I'd fall asleep. Bob taught me how to meditate. He had a way of conveying that. He was an excellent teacher. I mean, really deep in his heart, that's what he was. I think he had a degree in teaching, didn't he? Yeah. He was a teacher, and I know he had a master's in psychology, right? Psychology. So he really was a teacher deep down. And that's what he did with all of us. And the fun that we had and the things that he did for us were kind of, I think, secondary to the teaching that he did. I learned a lot from him. I'm angry that I didn't learn more. I feel like I should have learned more. But I did learn a lot of things. And I'm grateful that I knew him. And I'm grateful for all of you. And before I sit down,